Good morning. I won't take a real long time with this. There's not most of you in here have heard the story before, but what it basically boils down to is this is the third year that we've done a documentary. Me and Miss Rebecca Potter. She's also working on podcasts, and we're trying to do a lot of things, audio, visual type things and really tie the students into looking at our station in life in this area, not letting somebody else tell our story, but that we begin to tell our own story and what things are positive about here rather than just listening to the national media about all the negatives. So the title of this one this year, Promise Surrounded by Poverty, How Do We Persevere? We just listening to all of you all, and then of course the first session I went to, of all the great things that we're doing in our schools and being innovative with children and the things that the children are actually producing, and we need to take a bigger platform to promote what our kids are doing and also tie them back to we do a lot of things superficially at the surface now. All research says that our average child's attention span is about 8 seconds, which I applaud you all doing with what you're doing with the one-to-one, forcing them to be more deeply involved. But research says about 8 seconds is about what we can hold them a lot of times. So we're at Central Appalachia with our ARC map. And of course, we all know where we're at, but that is the poorest section of Appalachia, according to all socioeconomic status, and we're right in the middle of it. So we're surrounded by poverty, but we have a tremendous amount of promise. Our children are absolutely phenomenal when we should give them the avenues by which to do so. And that's the important part in what we're trying to look at. So why a documentary? The need to inform society that the children of Central Appalachia are doing great work despite the barriers that they face. We know our kids face more barriers than almost anybody in many cases. Of course, there's the famous picture of LBJ on the porch in Martin County, 1964, before he declares war on poverty, which we've been fighting since 1964 and we've never won, and probably aren't going to, or at least the way we're fighting it now. We're going to have to enable ourselves to overcome that, and I think that's the part that we've sometimes failed. But how did this picture develop the story of Central Appalachia? Well, if you can go back and look at the old footage of 1964 and 65, and then later in the early 1980s and all that, it just always, they never showed the positive side. The national media's always showed all the negatives that we have. In the 21st century, we're looking at the opioid addictions and the loss of jobs and unemployment rates and all those types of things. We let somebody else tell our story. And then they tell it enough that we begin to believe it. So what we've been trying to do is trying to enable our children to use 21st century soft skills and emotional intelligence skills to begin to talk to people, begin to evaluate their belief system and what they feel about what's going on around them, and just not to accept that this is their station in life and that they can't go beyond that. And that sometimes is a battle, as we all know in this room. For better or worse, the bulk of coal industry jobs are in Appalachia, and when that coal is gone, so are the jobs, and that pretty much has been what we have been faced with. And one of the things that we've tried to get students to look at is that what did we not do when we had all of this here? And we never forced those companies and outside companies to invest back into Appalachia. So we need to do the same thing, and we're trying to tie the kids into understanding their history, because it's important to know your history to know who you are and develop your belief system and what do I believe in, and that's part of the process what we're trying to work on. Why introduce students to the documentary process? It connects students to their rich history. It develops student interviewing questions. That they develop their own questions. The process of being able to talk to other people. We live in a society in the 21st century that people sit beside each other and they text each other. But working on making eye contact, turning your head a little bit, showing interest, being able to how to phrase a question, how to, when somebody answers something, to be able to develop a question that can, scaffold off of that and get into something deeper. Because sometimes when you're interviewing somebody, they say something that you never thought about, but you want to know more about. Well, how do you ask in an appropriate way to get them to where you want to go with it? And that takes some practice and some thought. Develop students' inquisitive nature, investigation skills, foster an appreciation of Appalachian culture, which is important to me because I'm from Appalachia. I think that sometimes we get a bad rap. Well, I know we've gotten a bad rap over time. and I think that we need to tell our own story. Building teamwork skills, learning to be social historians and advocates for their homeland or their home, develop oral and written communication skills, use cameras and audio recording equipment, which we know is a big thing. And of course, now in the 21st century, we've got cell phones, smartphones that are great cameras. They've got a camera everywhere they go. And we bought a lot of equipment over the last 3 years that they can just use their iPhone or their Samsung or whatever they've got. And if they want to interview somebody, they've got all the equipment right there. They can just do it with their phone. And it is easily used. And using editing programs. That's been our hardest thing. We've got Adobe Suite. And it's a great program. It works really well. But in the normal classroom day, it's hard to find time for children to be able to work, enough time to be able to edit film, and it seems like a lot of people who have never edited film or gone through footage and B-roll and all these types of things they don't realize how much time it actually takes to do those things. Barriers to producing a documentary, if any of you ever want to try to do this, and I recommend that you do, because I think it is a real eye-opening experience. I had a novel idea me and Miss Potter did about 3 years ago in the summer and said, well, let's try to do this. And we just tried to think something up. Well, let's do this. And it's been remarkable for us. We not only have the children grown, but we have grown intellectually from it. So I highly recommend it. And we met some really great people along the way that opened up a lot of things about our culture, our histories, our families, which has been really good. Identify who you would like to interview, purchase the right equipment. That's important because, get with your technology people or somebody that you trust to say, what equipment do we need to be able to do those types of things? We did it all by trial and error and contacting different people, and we've got a pretty good stash of things now. But when we started out, we had basically nothing. Learning to use the video, audio editing equipment and programs, learning the rules to video photography, still photography, and audio recording. There are rules. Just taking a picture of somebody right in the middle of the screen doesn't always tell the story. Getting the right perspective, the angle, the lighting, tells a better story sometimes, and getting students to understand, and even adults to understand, let's look at this picture through a different lens, or let's set up multiple cameras and take multiple views. That's important to think about. Due to the schedule delays, the estimated time of completion of this year is going to probably be May, maybe June. Because we just had delays. It's part of. It seems like everybody you talk to this year has been a year of delays, interruptions, and so that's kind of where we're at. Hurricane Michael didn't affect us. We were just other delays, but that's kind of where we're at. We've got one. The first one we did is on YouTube, and you can look up Piling Up Stones, and it'll pull that up. It's about 48 minutes long. Most people that have watched it have really enjoyed it. We've got the one from last year that's in the can that we're still doing some finishing editing on it, because that was mostly student initiated and their work. And then, of course, the one we're working on now. So if you have any questions, we'll do it at the end. Thank you. And I didn't really plan on going that long.